Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Friday, the 17th of May, 2019. And this morning I'm still in Newcastle. I'm standing outside the Moot Hall here, which is where at 2 o'clock this afternoon, court will reconvene and Judge Kramer will deliver his verdict as to whether or not Gateshead Metropolitan Borough Council have been successful in their application to jail Mark Steele for breach of the injunction awarded by Justice Nolan a few months ago, about 8 months ago or so last year. Well, of course it's going to be very interesting because this would be truly remarkable if Judge Kramer found in Gateshead Council's favour, because the breach of the injunction, i.e. harassment, would come down to what Gateshead Council have effectively agreed is one phone call and 2 emails. And this is the degree of desperation that Gateshead Council are feeling in their attempt to prevent Mark asking the hard questions about 5G and LED streetlights. And of course, it's not just asking the questions, but also producing the hard, irrefutable evidence. Well, we shouldn't be too surprised because Gateshead Council is led by Sheena Ramsey, who has a somewhat dodgy track record. She left Knowsley Metropolitan Borough Council in the Liverpool area under a massive cloud, receiving a £330,000 payoff. And this was basically to get rid of her and to keep her quiet, and so that the allegations of corruption did not come out into the public arena. Well, she then went to Worcester Council on a very low salary by comparison, only about £70,000 a year. But then she rocks up here in Gateshead on an eye-watering £160,000 a year. It's probably more than that now, because that's what it was nearly 3 years ago when she was appointed. And Sheena Ramsey and the mayor of Gateshead, Jill Green, were caught committing perjury, although it's a civil court, so basically the judge just sort of waved it away. But they both claimed that when Mark Steele presented his concerns about 5G and LED streetlights to Gateshead Council back in November 2017, that he left the podium and went for them. Well, fortunately, of course, there was actually video evidence of that event. And, the judge asked both Sheena Ramsey and Jill Green to point out the moment during Mark's presentation to the council where he went for them. And, of course, he didn't. So, right from the get-go, we've seen Sheena Ramsey and Jill Green effectively perjure themselves in an attempt to shut Mark down. And as Mark has repeatedly pointed out, there are some 35,000 of these Harvard technology leaf nut devices mounted on the top of LED streetlights all around the borough. And as Mark proved beyond any doubt during his AV10 presentation last weekend, the Harvard Technologies leaf nut product is indeed a 5G ready product. Their own documentation states that it is a data gathering device, and it will be used to trawl information as part of the Internet of Things. Now, this is, of course, is all being denied because the establishment does not want the general public to realise what is actually occurring and the degree to which this surveillance will be mounted on the people of Gateshead and, of course, ultimately right across the country and beyond. But it's not going their way. Of course, yesterday I did make the observation that Donald Trump had declared a state of emergency due to the threat of Huawei and the potential backdoor of this technology to US security. And now the British are making the same observation. I believe the Dutch have also made the same observation. So, this is the law of unintended consequences again, as, this technology is pushed at a phenomenal rate. And if anyone's seen or hasn't seen the Tom Wheeler presentation, the former chairman of the FCC in the US, and the presentation that he gave some nearly 3 years ago now, where he stated that, 5G shouldn't wait for the regulators to determine whether it's safe. It should just be got out there, because from an economic point of view, from a corporatist point of view, it's a license to print money. Well, the good news is that more and more people right around the world are waking up to the pernicious capabilities of this technology. And so we're seeing the likes of Brussels, Rome, Switzerland, and areas in Australia. In fact, in Sydney, there's an attempt to put a legal challenge on it. And what needs to manifest are groups all around the UK and multiple judicial reviews or injunctions launched to help raise further awareness, but more importantly, to prevent this technology from being rolled out. Mark stated in court yesterday that in his opinion, this is a directed energy weapon and can be deployed to cause harm. But of course, even without that, the capacity and capability for data gathering is completely unacceptable in any society that considers itself to be free. But I'm sure nobody really believes that any more than I do right now. So obviously we got a morning off because the judge had other commitments. But if you are in the northeast and you can get here for 2 o'clock this afternoon, then let's make sure this courtroom is rammed to make sure that the judiciary are scrutinised and held to account. Sounds like some people have made it already. I know that one gentleman who came here yesterday, he had to go back to London last night, and he was making every effort to get back for 2 o'clock today because he considers this judgment to be so crucial. Of course, in reality, it is a win-win, because if the judge rules in favour of Gateshead Council, which would frankly be quite farcical, but if he did, then it will be further evidence that the judiciary are working very closely with the establishment and the corporatocracy to shut down anyone who has the audacity to ask pertinent questions, and certainly anyone who basically tries to raise awareness about this humanitarian crime. But my sense is that unless Judge Kramer received a phone call from on high last night giving him instructions, then I think he pretty much got the message. I think he pretty much understands what's occurring here, and we'll see how it pans out. And whilst he may well, understandably, leave the injunction in place, keep asking or demanding that Mark behave himself and act with appropriate decorum, then any attempt to penalise Mark for writing or making one phone call and writing 2 emails would be absolutely preposterous. So it is, as I say, a win-win. Gateshead Council are not going to come out of this very well. As was stated yesterday, there is not a single lamestream reporter in the court because, of course, as far as the lamestream media is concerned, if they don't report on it, then it didn't happen. Well, we're here to make sure that people do know what's occurring and that this information can be shared. And as I also said yesterday, I walked out of court just before 5 o'clock, and the first notification I got on my phone was that I'd been put in Facebook jail for 3 days. So I can't post anything, and certainly not these videos, on Facebook. So any help that you can offer in sharing this around would be greatly appreciated. Now, elsewhere, of course, the lunatics are definitely losing control of the assignment as more and more people wake up. And of course, right now, sadly, Lynn Tyre is potentially facing her last weekend at liberty in the UK, as Judge Supperstone proved unequivocally that he is a total whore to the corporatocracy, and there was not a shred of meaningful evidence presented in court that justified him ruling that Lynn Tyre should be extradited to France. And next week she is expected to rock up to the allotted place and be transported away to France, where she is likely to spend some 2.5 years in a French jail on remand. And that's a country that is in total turmoil. And hopefully at the weekend we'll be uploading the presentation given by Georgia Pouliquin, at AV10, where she showed the very disturbing images of what's occurring in France and has been occurring over the last 27 weeks or so, and yet is not getting a single mention in the mainstream media. But David Noakes and Lynn Tyre, of course, David just released from Wandsworth Prison after serving 5 months, and yesterday the headlines on the paper were "New drugs to beat cancer in a decade." That was on the Express and in the Mail. New dawn in cancer war. Well, this is a total crock, because as everybody watching this knows, the pharmaceutical industry has no intention of ever releasing or allowing any effective treatment to come to market, because the revenue streams from chemo and radiotherapy are so lucrative. So, you know, before the person keels over, and let's remind ourselves that chemotherapy has an efficacy of about 2.7%. So before people actually move on to whatever it is that they move on to once they pass from this mortal coil, then the pharmaceutical industry wants to make sure that it gets something, anything from £40,000 to £90,000 worth of revenue from them. Meanwhile, of course, David and Lynn had developed and produced and distributed an extremely effective cancer treatment known as GC-MAF. And, you know, the establishment, of course, does not want people to know about this. And, you know, there is GC-MAF available in various forms from overseas. And, you know, I know that the genie is out of the bottle, and more people are looking to acquire this product. Of course, they'd love to acquire it from David and Lynn. But, you know, despite their tremendous track record and the outstanding efficacy, and of course, the counter to that is that nobody has ever died from taking GC-MAF. And, you know, this is not good enough. You know, the establishment wants them dead. It's part of the culling process. It's part of the population control management process, a bit like care pathways, which of course is a euphemism for nil by mouth, remove access to water and just let them pass on, keep them drugged up so that you know, they don't cause too much trouble in the hospital. So the lunatics are definitely losing control of the asylum as more and more people do, you know, wake up to their agenda. And you know, I would encourage people to take a look at the AV10 presentations when they become available, because the thread that runs through those presentations clearly shows the picture of the corporatocracy and the global banksters and their knowledge of what's coming and their intent to allow natural events to effectively wipe out a very significant percentage of the population. And this is what I'm referring to, of course, is the real climate change, which has nothing to do with CO2. I mean, that construct is again to keep people in line, and so that they can claim that as we get into a cooling period that they've been responsible for it due to their geoengineering programs. And then they'll claim, oh dear, we were a bit too good as we go into a period of very low solar activity, which leads to a massive reduction in food production. So it really is time to wake up and smell whatever it is that is emanating from those lunatics as they desperately try to regain control of the assignment. But please share as much as you possibly can. Looks like I've lost some quality on the transmission here. Wonder why that might be. Anyway, I'll call that a day, because it looks like they may have found a way to reduce the bandwidth here. It's been fine up till now. But anyway, do your own research, and please, if you can get here for 2 o'clock, do so. And I'll be certainly reporting more on the David Noakes and Lynn Tyre situation next week. And you know, let's show the massive support for these two very brave people who, despite the trials and the trauma and the torture that they have been subjected to over the past few years, because of their success in bringing people who'd been written off by the medical establishment, bringing them back to full health, when I've asked them, you know, would they do it all over again, they haven't hesitated and said most definitely. So, you know, they have done whatever they can for those people who have suffered from cancer, and now it's our turn to do whatever we can to support them and also to prevent the extradition of Lynn Tyre to France. And as for Judge Supperstone, well, I think I just trod in something, and you know, you're not even worth wiping off my shoe. Hey, you have a great day, and I'll be back this afternoon after Judge Kramer's ruling on the Gateshead Council's application to jail Mark Steele for asking the hard questions about 5G and LED streetlights. You have a great day.